Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to these talks on the 4 ways of changing the mind, the ordinary foundations, where we're exploring the section on karma, and more specifically on the karmas created by the mind itself. In the last talk, we were considering the first of the harmful karmas, because of course there are harmful and helpful karmas. The harmful karma of avarice, greed, attachment, clinging, to see the damage it did. And in there we looked at something very important, which is the presence in general of hope and fear. We can say for hope, expectation. I think it's a better word, in fact. It covers a general area, and we have so many expectations, either surface, visible, obvious ones, or underground hopes and expectations. And instead of fear, which is quite a strong word, we can say anxiety. Anxiety is something much more present in various degrees of strength, depending on the situation. So we saw the power of hope and fear, expectation and anxiety, and in particular how these lead to what are called the 8 worldly concerns. Today we move on to the second main mind poison, in the way it's expressed in these teachings on karma, where we focus particularly on ill will. Malevolence means the same thing, where our mind is wishing harm on others. It's happy when others suffer, or it wishes that they would die, disappear, not do so well. It's the opposite of wanting others to be happy in a worldly way, to be happy in a spiritual way. So we're going to explore how that comes about, the form it takes, and the karmas it makes, and their consequences. In general, this aspect of hostility, as we've seen before, comes from desire. Desire is the root of all of the mind poisons. Desire means getting what you want. It's about getting your own way, getting what you want. So the hostility comes when circumstances, other people, get in the way. Either really, or we fear they'll get in the way of us getting what we want, getting our own way. So we're looking at this hostility. Whereas with desire and attachment, remember the 2 poles of the magnets, the ones that attract, the ones that repel. Now we're looking at the repulsion. We need to explore this. It's the same always, not just to read the facts. We need to reflect, to think deeply. So in this case, we need to discover this feeling, this particular reaction inside ourselves. When somebody's name comes up, people are talking about them. If they're actually there, there's some hostile reaction inside you. You want to get them out of the picture, and this can take many shapes and forms. In general, what we are looking at here, I think, is very well covered in English by the word upset. It's what upsets us, or the people who upset us. Probably if we translate the texts more literally, the word will be troubled. It's what troubles our mind. And trouble is in the text the opposite of peace. Peace is when we are not troubled anymore by anything. So now we're looking at what troubles us, what upsets us. In fact, I'd like to take an English expression, which, a funny one, it says, to upset one's apple cart. So you have a cart or some kind of cart, container, trolley, full of apples. And when they fall over, then it's a mess. Many of the apples get damaged. All of that work to load them in very, very carefully has been lost. So the cart can turn over in a few moments, and hours of work has been lost, and the repercussions, the damage, the loss for the future is considerable. Upset the apple cart. And this is the very nature of hostility and upsetness. Things that have been put in place a long time. Friendships, family relationships, work circumstances, so many things can be overturned in a few moments of being upset, angry words, violent action. And that can have repercussions on and on through the future. So in other teachings, and in particular in the teachings on forbearance, we explore this a lot and from many angles. Now here, because we're looking at karma and we're looking at it in the traditional way, let's see what Khenpoken tells us. He tells us there are three main types of ill will coming out of this disturbed, this upset, this troubled mind. The first one is ill will, where we dislike, where we hate another person. The enemy, it's called. So we have friends, and as soon as we have friends and those we like to be with, those we favour, then also we have enemies, those we don't like so much to be with, and this can become more and more vivid. The most vivid example is probably in times of war, when there is an enemy and one wants them to hurt, one wants them to die, one wants them to be defeated, one wants them to suffer. That's quite vivid. So we have to explore in our own lives. If we have enemies, and once we discover those people where even thinking about them upsets us, troubles the mind, we don't feel comfortable, then we have to explore through mindfulness, day after day, as life circumstances happen. If there is any ill will, whereby we would like them to suffer or to die. Now, many people, when they first hear this, might think, gosh, that's over the top, and especially I'm a Buddhist, I don't think like that. But it can take many, many, many different shapes and colours. For instance, sometimes people are looking after an old parent, and the person is no longer perhaps very pleasant to be with physically. Maybe they themselves have become angry, upset, difficult. And they're living on, and because one has to look after them or give them time, then one resents because one's not able to fulfill one's own life. One can't do what one wants. And there's this kind of inner wish, if only they'd die soon, tomorrow, you'd feel better. Sometimes people want their money, their parents' money. Or in those very delicate, and I must say situations I've met quite a bit, those situations around death, where there are siblings, brothers, sisters, relatives, and an inheritance, then many times where people got on okay in the past, then because one brother, one sister seems to be favoured more than another, there can be very hostile feelings, and one would want them to lose. So we're looking at this hostile mind that would like to get rid of people, like them to lose, get out of the situation. That's one form of ill will, when there are those who oppose us, those who stop us getting our own way, those who are enemies. The second type of ill will comes through jealousy and competition, whereby, again, we can't get our own way, we can't get the job we want, we can't get the fame we want, we can't get the boyfriend, the girlfriend we want, because there's somebody who has more than we do. The positive quality, which goes under that very, very nice Buddhist name of rejoicing in virtue, is that we're happy that people are doing well. We're happy that they're clever, that they're handsome, that they're gifted, that they have charisma, they have charm, whatever it is. Here, we are not happy at all because we want what they've got. So we want them out of the way. Maybe if you're an athlete, you're hoping that they'll trip over and twist their ankle or hurt themselves and won't be able to compete. If it's a competitor for a boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe you hope they'll fall in love with somebody else or whatever it is. Competition leads us to think harmfully towards another being, not benevolently. There's malevolence, ill will, and benevolence, goodwill towards people. And then the third type of ill will is resent. There's so much of this, so much, where someone has hurt you in the past, and you carry that past, and you resent that person, the thought of that person. Sometimes it's unbearable. You can't even think of them. And if you do think of them, you would want revenge. You'd want them to suffer. You'd want life to pay them back. Resent. So there again, a mind that wishes harm to come to another. Let's take one very real example. Of course, we all know what the Tibetans went through, 1959 and afterwards, Cultural Revolution. So when Mao Zedong died, many Tibetans were very happy, dancing in the street. Of course, as human beings, how much we can understand that. They saw their relatives killed, they lost so much materially, everything they had. But from a Buddhist point of view, it's not on. It's not on. And in fact, when we feel like that, it's a sign not that somebody else is in the wrong. It's a sign of our own ignorance, our own lack of understanding about karma, the other person's karma, the karma that makes situations happen. It's a signal that we haven't understood. But anyway, when there is resent, we enter a very, very difficult area of discussion. Really, when we come to so many stories of abuse at one time or another in their life, it brings up many difficult reflections about the nature of karma. For us, this is good. If we're going to believe in karma, you have to believe in it. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. So anyway, resent can be one of the reasons whereby we would wish harm on others. There are three reasons: enemies, competition, and resent. Now here we're looking at mind karma. And although those three could cause us to do things with our speech, to speak woundingly and so on, or with our body to actually fight the enemy and so on. Here we're looking at the power of mind itself. So the worst outcome, if there is a mind which is so full of this hostility, this resent, day after day, that wants harm to come to people for one's own benefit. If it's very strong, very vicious, very much repeated, then that mind, when it leaves the body at death and is left with its own programming, which can produce all sorts of hallucinations, from the most beautiful to the most horrible, then that mind can create for itself its own worst nightmare, where those ones you've been wanting to hurt and to suffer for your benefit, so you can get your way, then you don't get your way, and they hurt you in return. Or you get hurt and hurt and hurt again. Hell rooms, hell hallucinations, if you prefer. That's the very worst outcome. Then it says, if that's not the case, or after that's been the case, and when eventually we are reborn as human beings, then, even though you're human, you will have a mind which tends to resent, which tends to look down on others, wish them harm through competition, and a mind which creates very strongly enemies. And my goodness, we see this in life all around us, don't we? Some people have many enemies. They have many enemies. Now, all of this comes from the upset mind. We need to understand that upset mind. We need to explore it, find it in ourselves, try to work out what's going on here. People tend to say, he really upset me today. Or, oh gosh, she's upsetting me. She upsets me so much. Or whatever it is, the weather, the politics, what the president's doing, what the world is doing. We say, this upsets me. It doesn't. Oh no. Oh no. You upset you. I upset me. We upset ourselves because of him, because of her, because of the weather, because of the politics. It's the way it works. And we see that once we follow the Buddhist path. We learn how to not upset ourselves, how to completely turn the situation around, where those things that were difficulties, annoyances, upsetting before, become treasures, because we learn to turn them into compassion, peacefulness, equanimity, understanding, wisdom, so much good. So if the actual people upset you, you couldn't change it. We upset ourselves. And this is really the point when we look at the karma of mind. We're looking at the power of the mind, the ongoing story of our mind. It's very much the keynote when we look at mental karma. Unlike the physical and the verbal, where you do something and then in another life something happens, mind is an ongoing story. So we're looking at the power of our mind to reshape and recolor itself. So even if one's been born human again, these tendencies will come through. You will be somebody with many enemies, somebody who gets upset by this and by that, and because of that, you blame it. There's blame. And then because of the blame, then there's malevolence, there's ill will. The third outcome, the environmental outcome, it says that one will be reborn in a place where the foods are coarse or bitter or sour, not good foods. Now, we can't take this too literally, all these environmental things, and say, you were born in a country where the food is sour, therefore you must have had a very malevolent mind in the past. But more generally, we do need to take note that the whole quality of this world we live in, whether it's kind to us and generous, or whether it's difficult and more unpredictable, this is part of human karma, group karma, and personal karma. The opposite of malevolence is benevolence, whereby we don't have enemies. It says in the Bodhisattva teachings, your enemy is your best friend, becomes your best friend, because it's through them that you really learn love and compassion. The love and the compassion come from wisdom, the wisdom of understanding the power of karma behind all this story of life. That's a lot. So benevolence is turning the people, the situations that have upset us, into treasures of learning and developing good qualities in here. In competition, we see through the teachings on impermanence how superficial, how trivial, how petty human success is. We put it in its place, we give it the weight it deserves, but not more. It doesn't become too big a deal. And of course, with resent, we think a lot about karma, how we could be hurt, who hurt us, what will happen to them through their karma of doing that, and so on and so on. And we practice forgiveness. Forgiveness which frees our own mind, rather than carrying that inner poison of resent. We free our own mind by forgiving those who hurt us. Today, and in the last talk, and in the next talk, we're looking at the poisons of mind. They are poisons. An upset mind is not a happy mind. We don't want it. It's no good. Get rid of it. As long as the habit is there, the tendency, the propensity, we are vulnerable. People can upset us. Circumstances can upset us. We're like a bomb ready to go off. It's a poison. In the text it says, somebody with an angry mind, even though they may pay their servants a lot of money, the servants come put up with them. They'll leave them. Wife and family, husband and family, leave them. You're not nice to be with, and it's not nice for you to be with yourself. So we need to replace these poisons with medicine. The medicine, a loving, kind, peaceful, benevolent mind. This is medicine inside. You feel happy living with yourself. People enjoy being with you, and that makes life pleasant. I think that's enough for today. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for studying, and most importantly, practicing the Buddha Dharma. Thank you very much.